Hi and welcome back to the Gemhawks YouTube channel. I hope you're having a beautiful day today no matter what it is you're doing. For the free wire tutorial today I'd like to share with you another quick fix earring, and this is called Arrows in Her Eyes. I hope that you'll enjoy it. Head down to the board and let's get making together. So this is the Arrows in Her Eyes earring. You can use your bead stash or a particular set of beads if you desire. I've got them graduating up from around about 5mm up to about 10mm at the top. You don't have to have them graduating from smallest to largest, but I really like how that looks. And I've chosen to work today in an antique bronze tone wire, and we'll be working in 1mm or 18 gauge. So if I pop the piece down there, let's grab that piece of wire. So this is around about 10 or 11 inches, and as with all of my earring projects, it does pay to make the two pieces at the same time to make sure that all of your angles match up before it's too late to make any adjustments. So we will begin by conditioning that length of wire. And as I say, it's around about 10 or 11 inches or so of 1mm or 18 gauge wire. So we're going to make the initial bend about 2/3 of the way along. I'm going to bring that wire quite sharply up and back towards the shorter side. Now I do quite want it to be arrow-like, so what you can do to help get a sharper bend is just take that wire past the point at which you want the angle to occur and then bring it back again, and you can refine that just by carefully pinching the wire close to the tip. Once you've got the look and feel that you're looking for, that looks about right to me in terms of angles and matching up. Might need to be slightly wider. Let's give that a quick open. And there we go. And then you will need to obviously match the distances between angle changes if you're making them as earrings. So I'm going to start by just softly bringing that wire over, and then I'm going to see, I think that might be just a little bit too short. So let's nibble our way along the wire, and you can make that a little bit longer, and now it's the right size. So pinching very firmly and drawing the wire back down, and then pulling it back again, you get that slightly sharper impression on the wire formation. And I'm just going to give that a quick little squish and a squeeze to make sure that that's starting to come together. So again, we're going to take a quick look at that wire formation. A little bit too tight on the angle, I think. And then I'm going to flip it over and do the exact same on the far side. So again, you can play around with how you just check the distances to make sure that those are both the same distances from the lowest point and the top angle here. You might need to increase that or decrease that slightly, and then bring that wire back down sharply so that it crosses over. And then once you start to open it back out, you can refine that angle to make sure that it's nice and sharp. So you've got a slightly shorter tail and a slightly longer tail. The slightly shorter tail is the one that we're going to use as the upright to become the core of the design. So let's just put those together and make sure that they're close enough. It's reasonably close. You could, of course, take a little bit more time, or you could even use a measuring stick of some description. So the shorter length of wire, we're going to take into the middle and then draw that upright to get that nice core wire that we will add those beads onto. So again, sharp angles where you possibly can. Give that a bit of a squish and a squeeze. Match it up where possible. And you might need to open it slightly or close it slightly to get it to sit properly. So you've got the basic arrow formation of the Arrows in Her Eyes earrings. And what we're going to do is flip that over for a second, grip a hold of the now longer tail of wire. And what we're going to do is to create a bend that goes ever so slightly upwards. So it's just bending at around about the same place that we've added that first angle change, making sure that your distances are very similar. And we're just going to grip hold of that lower section for a moment. I'm going to grip across the design like so, and then just push that longer tail of wire around the core and across the back. Now it's lifting up slightly behind, and I don't want it to lift up. I want it to be slightly flatter than that. but I do want to make sure that I'm not losing any of this distance as I begin wrapping the longer tail around the core. So if I hold that firmly in position and just draw that wire all the way around the core, I can then squish that down so that it sits slightly better. So let's just draw that core wire up smoothly to make sure it stays flat and straight, and then just offer up those two arrows, one on top of the other, and I'm going to bring that longer tail of wire around one more time, remembering that if I pull on this wire, it will want to draw from this section. So it will want to draw from the side of the arrow that you've already measured. We don't want that to happen, so you can support that very firmly. Pinch that down into position if it comes away from true, and then take that across the back one more time. Now you can see that I've made quite an ugly open spiral just here. So I'm going to pinch very, very firmly, draw that around, and then just squash down to tighten up that spiral down at the nexus point where all of those angle changes are occurring. I'm going to put some heat and warmth through the longer tail, and then I'm just going to check that everything sits how I'm looking for it to sit. You may need to make some minor modifications just to get your earrings to match. And again, give that a bit of a squish to make sure that that little coil down at the base is nice and neat and tidy. So as I mentioned, you don't have to follow the protocol of smallest at the bottom through to a middle size, through to a large. You can really vary that if you want to. I just happen to think it's most effective if it graduates up. I've gone for red and black because, well, you may have noticed it's a favourite colour combination of mine, and I've also added in some antique gold to go with that bronze wire. Obviously the world is your oyster when you're making your own jewellery. You can absolutely change that up, add whatever colour flare or bead flare you want to. This pair of earrings was inspired by the Foo Fighters song Arrows. It's one of my absolute favourites by that band. So this is the Arrows in Her Eyes earring. Let's head back down and get to adding those beads. So I'm going to be working with a couple of different shapes. I've got this hexagonal glossy bead to go up near the top of the design, and I've got a saucer and a rondelle to work with. Now if you are brand new to wire work, choose good sturdy beads in either a rondelle shape or a round shape and your life will be super easy. So the shorter wire is the core. Let's add our first bead. I've gone for this antique bronze saucer shape, and you can see that my heavier wire, which is the longer tail, is coming off the top of the core wire. So I'm going to grip the bead into position, making sure it's good and straight, and I'm going to draw the tail of wire round underneath that core. So you get this swooshing arc of wire around the outside. I'm then going to support that core wire as I draw the tail, the wrapping tail, all the way around the edge. We're then going to add in the rondelle. Now the rondelle and the saucer are super easy shapes to work with, so do stick with those if you're brand new or if you're concerned about not getting the technique straight away and you want to have a bit of a practice. So again, this wire has seen some action. When we're wrapping around here down at the base of the arrow, what will happen is it will harden the wire further along than you're actually wrapping at the time. So if I grip the bead in position, again I'm going to take the wire over the side of the bead and underneath, all the way back over the top of that core. So those two work in exactly the same way. That's really simple. I'm going to add a slightly trickier bead now with this hexagonal glossy black bead. Let's just find the bead hole and slide that one down. So when you're working with beads that have funny angles in them, or sharp angles, we're going to recreate that angle softly with the wire. So what we need to do is first of all match that lowest angle, which is coming away at a bit of a jaunty shape on the side there. It's less than 45 degrees. So if I pop that on a straight line, you can see I've just matched that angle with my wrapping wire. What I'm going to do now is to add a straightened bend. That makes no sense at all. You know what I mean. We're going to add an angle in on the edge, but what we want to do is to give a little bit of space between the bead and where the pliers sit. Then we're going to move the bead out of the way and draw that wire parallel to the core. So we're chasing around the outside of that bead, but we're not squishing into it. Now I've made that a little bit too far away from the bead, so we can slide that bead back out of the way, and we can just nibble along the wire slightly to bring that slightly closer to the bead. You'll see that that's a much better shape now. So we're going to again do the same thing. We want to bring the wire back towards the core, and we'll be taking the wrapping wire underneath that core wire, but let's take that bead out of the way. It's come over the top, don't fret about it, we can soon just slide that back underneath. Bring that cautiously into position, replicating that first angle we made down at the base. So we've chased around the outside of a funny shaped bead. It's not quite right. You'll notice that this isn't completely parallel to the core wire. So let's just draw that bead out of the way one more time and just carefully draw that slightly closer, slide the bead back in, and we are ready to move on to the next step. Now what we want to do is to wrap around the core wire, but again, when you start pulling this wrapping wire around the core, what will happen is that wire will be used from this section. We don't want that to be used because it will draw the wire around and we'll lose that lovely haloing effect. One of the things that we can do to prevent this is just, let's slide that bead slightly over to one side for a sec, there we go. So we've got the lovely haloing effect. What I can do to help myself is hold the wrapping wire underneath the core with my pliers, draw the wire up and over so that it comes across the top of that core wire. So we've made a loop. If you see from over the top, you can see that's looping around the core wire. And if we do that as step one, and then we can start to just draw this tail around 3 times to make a lovely little section of wrapped wire up at the top. So if you have very good grip strength, you can hold on to this and start to bring that tail around by hand. This is the point in time that you can bend your core wire and you can lose some of the size here. I've actually got a little bit of spare there, so I'm just going to allow that to be used up by drawing the tail of wire around. Can you see, in just drawing the tail of wire, I've got that outer line, that outer halo line is now a little bit more parallel. So you can use a little bit up if you need to. Now what we want to do is to prevent any more of this wire from being used. So one of the ways that you can do this is to grab a second set of pliers with a flat face. So I've got my standard chain nose pliers here. I'm being very cautious not to hurt my bead, but I am very firmly preventing that wire from moving around. So if I draw the tail again around that core, once we push the bead back into position, you'll see that it still moves inside the little space that we've made for it. So I do need one more wrap. Take this wire to the back of the design, but I'm very conscious that I don't want to lose any more of that wire that creates the little halo. I also don't want to damage my bead, so I'm going to very, very firmly grip the haloing wire, take that wire across the back, and of course it is being very, very tense by now. So let's just trim away to a couple of millimeters. Let's get that into the scrap pot for later use. I might need to trim a little bit more off that in just a moment as well. And what we need to do is just draw that around the back. If you find that you have taken too much wire from this section, what you can do is very, very gently turn your pliers in the opposite direction and you can reset it a step. Then you need to grip very, very firmly whilst you take that last little tail of wire across to the back of the design. Protect your bead. I'm using my thumbnails because, well, let's be honest, they're not that spectacularly beautiful. So that's the nuts and bolts of the design. Just might need to straighten it up slightly. To finish off, all I'm going to do is a simple loop at the top. Now when you're creating earrings, quite often a simple loop is all that is needed. If you prefer, you absolutely can go for a wrapped loop. I'm just going to grab the small pin on my memory wire pliers. Let's just move that out of the way. Draw the wire all the way around into a loop shape and then cut that away at the rear side. More scrap for later. Before I just refine how that top link sits, give it a squish and a squeeze. Squish and a squeeze like so. That hardens up the loop, so for 9 times out of 10 that will be perfectly stable and it won't be a problem at all. If you're making charms to go on a bracelet, I would say wrapped loops are probably better. Let's just pop the earring finding into position and close it up. And then you have a completed pair of arrows in her eyes earrings. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed the arrows in her eyes earring tutorial. I know that I have lots of fun making earrings and pendants and, well, all jewellery basically. If you've never heard the song by the Foo Fighters, then do check it out. I'm sure you can hear it here on YouTube. Do have yourself an absolutely fantastic week, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. There is somebody just here who wants to say hello though, so this is Mojo. He's #1 dog around here. He's not particularly fond of being lifted up or saying hello to camera, but here we go. Oh, here's the other one. Joey wanted to get in on the act as well. Go on, down you go, buddy. No, you can't go on the desk. Come on, Joey. There you go. There's Joey dog. Have a lovely week. Bye.